basically like your goals over the years, they've changed frequently, but have your career goals changed? Like, do you still want to just research and research and research, or are you like willing to maybe branch off and investigate
Um, I,
personally?
I would like to, yes. I'm not a big I'm not a big fan of the term or of the concept of dream job. I'm more like
Mm-hmm.
what are my career aspirations, and eventually I'd like to get outside, still stay inside academia a little bit, but largely kind of branch out into either um, government or policing kind of stuff. Ultimately, the main career aspiration is I'd love to do some transnational or cross-border environmental policing work with Interpol. So,
Yeah.
I as a doctor, sorry, will be eventually being a doctor or being one in the future as a green criminologist in the future. I'd love to be on the front lines of environmental crime, researching it, writing about it, preventing it where I can necessary. Um, I'd like to do a lot of travel, and I like to combine that with work as well. So that element of transnational environmental policing, and in order to get to that level, I knew that I would need the PhD as well to
Mm-hmm.
become someone recognized in the field. So that's another reason why I've done what I've done. So this research grant is going to definitely help with this knowledge and boost further expertise and skills in the future. But ultimately, like in the next 20 to 30 years, I'd like to do that cross-border environmental stuff. Would just be fantastic.
It sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot of the communications with a lot of others in this field a lot more, and especially the wider community, you can hear their voices a lot more, and
Exactly. Yeah.
intern and external, and it was like it sounds perfect.
Yeah. I'll end up, especially throughout this project, end up speaking to a lot of local community residents and or irrigators and farmers and what are their concerns, going back to policymakers or other bigger corporations or organizations, and just getting a diversity. So I really enjoy qualitative research, hearing those perspectives and what they are. I enjoy a bit of quantitative research here or there, as I did in my honors, but largely the qualitative stuff. That's what I did. That's what I've done throughout the PhD. That's where my skills have developed. Yeah, but ultimately that transnational stuff is where I'd like to see myself.
That's cool. Um, so I'm Amy, our
Yeah.
friend and president of the society, actually mentioned to me that you recently presented to the government.
Ooh.
What was that on, if we can know?
Not having presented to the government,
Presented,
I
yeah.
think in terms of presenting, I think what Amy might be referring to would be the ANZSOC conference that we went to Darwin last year. So every year, like the major criminology body or society for all criminologists in Australia and New Zealand is the Australian and New Zealand Society of Criminology, or the ANZSOC conference. It was held in Darwin last year. It was my first time going to Darwin. Went to go see some of the alligators and fed them and held some snakes, gorgeous creatures. But that's where I presented on my work to some of the other green criminologists and or just other criminologists in general in the field. Not so much government stuff, but yeah, that's the last time I've did like a first major conference presentation. And going up to Darwin itself, obviously, for all of us that have learned and spoke about First Nations or Indigenous issues within the classroom, and policing or law enforcement and so forth, actually going to Darwin and seeing it firsthand is eye-opening. It's quite shocking as well, because those colonial divides are still quite prevalent, or they're still quite evident. It was a very eye-opening experience, but I loved going to Darwin despite the weather. Loving the weather as well, but being very humid. But yeah, that was the last major presentation that I did. That there may have been some government people there or like government affiliated or representatives. But otherwise, it was just for the criminology conference.
Did you enjoy presenting your study?
I did, yeah. It's a because when you spend so much time researching and writing something, instead of letting it sit in the thesis or sit in the library somewhere and not sharing that knowledge with the world, it's good practice. So I did a lot of drama and theater as a student throughout both primary and secondary school, a little bit of tertiary. So I've always had the ability to memorize a script and be able to deliver that script. So those skills have very much come in handy for being able to deliver a conference presentation. And plus, when you're writing something similar so many times in the thesis, it becomes ingrained in here. So for anyone doing postgraduate or wanting to do postgraduate research in the future, especially either a master's or a PhD, when you take time off, obviously you can take time off, but it's always on the back of your mind. I've always said to myself and my friends and students, the moment you don't stop thinking about your PhD from the moment you started until the moment you've submitted. So I managed to get in a small holiday away just before COVID in 2020. Went to Greece, Spain, Italy, and so forth. But every so often, I'd just be like, oh, I wonder if there's any international water theft stuff, because I know I've got to include some of that in the thesis. And just any examples, or I ended up coming across a 1,000-year-old water court called the Tribunal de la Aguas in Valencia in Spain, if I'm correct. A very rich irrigation and agricultural region. In doing so, I brought that example from travels, brought it into the thesis, and managed to get an academic article out of it as well. Yeah, so I completely. What was the question again? Sorry.
Just like how you're obviously very passionate about this and you've included everything, but like presenting your study to fellow criminologists, like that must have felt amazing.
It was an amazing experience. And any time or any opportunity that students have to present, obviously, when it comes to presentations within the undergraduate, it's for an assignment. But sorry, there's a fly. But for anyone that's considering postgraduate study, like honors or masters or etc., there's another kind of a mini criminology conference called the Victorian Postgraduate Criminology Conference, the VPCC, where honors, masters, and PhD students can present segments of their research for practice in front of peers and colleagues, and so forth. Most importantly, for everyone watching and later this year, the ANZSOC conference this year is going to be held at the State Library in Victoria. So yeah, might be worth putting it. There's a little bit of money to get in, I think. I can't remember. But later this year, in either early December, there'll be a whole bunch of criminology professionals or academics from across the country presenting on various segments of the research. It goes for about 3 to 4 days, and I think it was like over 100 presentations, or
wow,
there's so many. So for anyone wanting to go to the ANZSOC conference, it's in Melbourne this year. Highly recommend that. But in general, yeah, presenting, it was really worthwhile.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And it's like good practice too for formulating your own ideas and learning from others too, because they can come up to you after the presentation and ask you about it and bounce off each other pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.